At the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Germany President Frank-Walter Steinmeier pays his first state visit to China, which lasts from December the 5th to the 10th. During his trip, Steinmeier will exchange views with President Xi and Premier Keqiang on bilateral ties, China-EU relations, and major international issues of common concern. Before our discussion, take a look.
German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier's six-day state visit begins in southeast China's Guangdong province before moving to southwest China's Sichuan province and Beijing, where he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Keqiang. During his trip to Guangdong, Mr. Steinmeier spoke highly of the remarkable achievements of China's reform and opening up, and he said Germany was willing to promote deeper cooperation in sectors such as the economy, technology, and culture. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said China hoped the visit would tighten political ties and raise the country's strategic mutual trust. Relations between China and Germany have been on a high momentum this year. Earlier this month, on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, President Xi met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. In July, Premier Keqiang and Ms. Merkel co-chaired the intergovernmental consultations in Berlin. And in May, the German Chancellor visited China and attended the symposium of the China-Germany Economic Advisory Committee with Premier Li. The two countries established an all-dimensional strategic partnership in 2014. China has become Germany's largest trading partner for 2 consecutive years. Trade volume between both sides accounts for about 30% of the total volume between China and Europe, and there is still room for cooperation between the two countries despite current global challenges.
For more on China-German ties, we are joined in our Beijing studio Cui Hongjian, who is the head of the European Studies Department at the China Institute of International Relations. Also in Beijing studio, Frank Sieran, best-selling author, journalist, and filmmaker from Germany, of course. Welcome to the both of you, gentlemen. I want to start with you. The president's visit, his first time as president. But he certainly has been here 15 years ago when he was serving the administration then. How should we understand the significance of this visit for him, given the fact that he knows China somewhat?
Yeah, he has quite a lot of experience with China. He, as a foreign minister, for example, he was working very close together with the Chinese foreign minister to convince Obama to get off the sanctions in Iran. So there are a lot of elaborate channels. So I think he can talk very openly and very clearly about the problems and the perspective between the Chinese-German relations.
I see. Mr. Cui, of course, this is coming with a big backdrop. First of all, G20 wrap up with a joint declaration. Certainly, countries, including China, Germany, sign on it, have some of the common grounds being lined up. Secondly, you see China-U.S. trade war having a suspense, at least for now. We don't know 3 months from now what's going to happen. Thirdly, you do see that Germany and the United States are also in a somewhat tense relationship, particularly when it comes to trade, car, for example.
Sure.
So how should we understand all this mixture of information with the big backdrop?
Yes, exactly. If we look at this visit by a German president in China, we can find out maybe more actually significance from its background. As we know, both China and Germany, we share a very similar position in world trade. Both two countries, we export a lot, and also both China and Germany, we win so many surplus in trade. So indeed, both China and Germany would be a target for any kind of protectionism. So we share the same position. So I hope that not only this visit by President Steinmeier, and also this more cooperation between China and Germany we will try to release a very strong message to the international community.
Besides the consensus about trade and being the so-called victim of protectionist measures coming from some of the world's biggest economies, how can, though, China and Germany be able to work together on these issues? That's a big question mark, because the WTO discussion could take quite a long time, and you cannot have a very quick fix for now. And if you talk about other multilateral platforms, yes, they are helpful, but they're not necessarily going to decide the direction of discussion. So,
but there are opportunities. Germany will be, the next 2 years, will be non-permanent member in the Security Council. China is a member of the Security Council. I think this could be a quite interesting platform to find common ideas, to find out what Germany and China can do together to shape the world in a better way.
Some say Donald Trump and the current administration in the United States picking up this trade war with China. Not many around the world would like that. However, others say maybe they can also sail with the Trump administration in terms of some of the issues they want to figure out with China. I wonder whether Germany is holding that position.
Basically, Germany is kind of in between. It's very difficult because we share a lot of common values with the United States, but we are kind of drifting apart, and suddenly we have common interests with China, more and more common interests with China in the climate issue, on the trade, but also technology-wise. So, but for the Germans it's very difficult, but because they kind of linked to America, still linked to America, but they are more and more linked to China, and they have to decide from day to day, from step to step, what to do.
That's very interesting, Mr. Cui, because China also has to decide what to do every day, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, China is not a past China, like a developing country, totally, because a part of it is quite developed. But it's not the future China yet, because it's not a developed economy, and its system is somewhat different from some of the others, for example, that of Germany. So it seems that China is also at the crossroad, has to decide on a constant basis as to what to do and how to handle the waves of challenges.
Yes, sure. Firstly, because I just finished my academic visit in Germany.
Yes.
So I can have a very deep impression about how it is very conflicting feeling from Germany on China, and also how about the hesitant from Germany try to have some close cooperation, share some more common ground with China.
Come from?
I think that firstly, yes, Germany still, takes a very big value of the cooperation with China, because we do have a, so big common interests.
Trade, for example.
In the last 2 or 3 years, China already the biggest trade partner with Germany. But at the same time, just like my German friends mentioned that on some issues, German side share the same stance with the United States. For example, try to push China forward some more reforms on the so-called IPR or some other issues. So I think, yes, you are right to say that I think it will give some more maybe new dynamic for China.
Let's talk about some of the areas that both of you mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at specific issues, it could be very interesting crystallization of the position where we are. Cars.
Yes.
That's an interesting example, isn't it? Donald Trump threatened 25% tariffs against the German cars, foreign cars coming into the U.S. market. Of course, earlier Tuesday, we heard Daimler Chrysler, together with some of the other Volkswagen and some of the others, went into the White House, but we didn't hear any result of that discussion. But the question is, that tariff is not being threatened, at least on January the 1st, and yet we do not know when that knife will fall. That's what the car makers are thinking. So will that be able to make Germany and China more in an empathy toward one another? And therefore, what can be done?
In one way, yes, because they need to stick together. They want to trade cars. In another way, no, because there are new cars coming, autonomous driving. Then we're talking about data. We have completely different perspective of data protection.
Yes.
So we need to sit down to listen to each other.
And the cars could also be competitive with one another in the other markets as well.
The cars becoming more and more competitive. In the years before, the Chinese cars were not really competitive. This is changing now dramatically. So, but still we need to sit together and find a way how we can work together. But that's more difficult than it was before, because, for example, the German car industry is more challenged. And so, in one way, we Germans, we are afraid of the Chinese car industry. In other ways, the Chinese car industry is an ally fighting against tariffs, keeping
the markets open.
The markets open.
Exactly.
And so things becoming more complicated. So we need to spend more time in understanding each other. The Germans need to listen to the Chinese to understand why they're doing things.
You don't think they do?
And
you don't think they do?
Not enough. And
not
the other
enough.
way around. And the other way around, China needs to listen to the Germans. Why do they have this kind of mentality of data protection? What is their history?
Right.
What are their bad experience? And if you understand each other, then it's easier to find a way to work together.
Right, but Mr. Cui, you know, with the Huawei issue going on right now, many wonder from China whether those that are our potential partners can be reliable when it comes to critical issues. For example, about the credibility of cooperation. British Telecom, for example, the BT, has to quit Huawei. According to them, it is a result of the so-called Five Eyes scheme they had with the United States. So we put aside the specific of the case, but just the general idea and the logic behind it. So when China is looking at partners, such as Germany, is China looking at them thinking, are they going to be reliable when pressure is being put on them, let's just say from Washington? After all, it's not their interest, it's China's interest. It's the interest of cooperation.
Yes, I think now it's a very important time for China, and also not only for China. I think it's the same issue for Germany to look for some more reliable partners. I think indeed for Germany and some European countries, I think they suffered a lot because of the some change of the alliance between Europe and the United States.
We'll ask our German friend about that, whether the change has really happened with the alliance.
Even on the issue of the Huawei and the G5 you mentioned. And so far, I think that Germany is one of the more reliable partner with China, because in Germany we also heard some discussion about it. I think it's so far, in general, the mainstream in Germany is trying to open to this Huawei on this technology and this standard. But of course, I think at the same time, for China, I agree with my German friend. We need to have some more mutual communication. We need to have some more mutual understanding.
Right.
It's a very, very critical time to improve our mutual trust.
Hearing is not listening. There's a huge difference over there about that.
And it's more complicated. I think it's too simple to ask from the Chinese side to ask, are they reliable or not? It's more complicated. There are traditions. There was there's a tradition of Western alliance.
Yeah.
The Americans helped
of course,
to free Europe.
Everybody knows that part of the history, but the question is when they come to business deals.
Yes, but
this is not about alliance.
But you can't separate it.
Yeah.
You can't separate it. So therefore, you need more understanding that we Germans, we probably would like to work closer with China, but we have certain obligations, not only of history, and then we speak
and personal feelings as well.
Yes, and we have different ways of running our countries. So it's not so easy. It's not like, are you on my side or not?
Right. It's not about whether you are on my side or not. It's about business deals. Whether when you have a business deal, you're going to carry out the business deal because there's a lot of credibility at stake. Having said that, though, that's only two issues that we just mentioned. However, there's already a lot of complexity in it. So when the president is coming to China. Certainly this is happening with the earlier visits between the two countries, top of the leadership, quite frequently these days, I have to say. So what can really be achieved? I mean, we're at a critical time. Only listening to one another is not enough.
You can build up trust. I think that's very important. And our president is known in China for a very long time. He knows the people he is talking to, so he can build up trust. He can explain why Germany is hesitating. He can explain why German car industry is worried about China as well, because they're becoming competitors. That's not easy. The world is changing. Before there was one world power, and it was clear.
So what's going to be the choice for Germany? I mean, we can just keep on listening to one another about each other's responsibilities, shouldering of the past and uncertain about the future. But there has to be solutions.
Yes.
So if we're talking about a solution
example,
and result-oriented relationship, what is that going to be like?
For example, one big worry of the German industry is that the Chinese market is still partly closed. So the reaction in Germany is that they start closing it as well. That's probably not a good idea. So if there would be signs from China that they're constantly opening up, so that the German industry has a chance to participate, that would be a way things would become better and easier for both sides.
Yeah.
I understand the concern from German side, but I need to remind our German friends that yes, China has a rich of experience for the opening up and reform in the last 40 years. But I think that now it would be a new stage for the opening up and reform for China, because now China has some more capability and China has some more experience. So I don't think that China will just follow the original steps to do something. Maybe in a new stage, China will have its reform and opening up, maybe in its own more commitment and more how to say active. So I think that will be a big change.
Mr. Cui has been very diplomatic in the way he put it. He's just trying to say that China is not the China that is trying to make the shirt, thousands and millions of them every day. It's a different stage of China's development. China has its own technologies. China's industry has become somewhat stronger than it used to be, and China has this more sophisticated domestic market as well. So how this will tie up to China's next plan of its opening up and reform, and what would be others' role if they want to have a role in this change, that is really up to the German to decide in a way at this critical juncture. Mr. Siren.
Yeah, but the problem is if you don't have full access, then it's very difficult to decide. I think no one really wants that China is going to stay.
For example, if the U.S. put on 25% tariff on the German cars, will German companies still looking at the U.S. market? That's the decision that the German companies have to decide.
They just went there to discuss and negotiate.
Exactly. So that is a question facing every country, every industry. So you can't say you open up the market and then I decide, but rather it's an interaction with one another.
It's easier to decide if the market is more open, because then it's easier to interact. And what I'm worried is that the market is not getting more and more open in China, so the Europeans, they close their market as well, and then we will have a situation.
Heard, Mr. Siren, if I could remind you of some of the latest measures taken by the Chinese side. There's a whole list of them. I don't know whether our international investors are reading them efficiently and sufficiently just over the past few months or not.
And these are good signs, but this has to continue.
But what about credibility side from the German? Let's just say if there is agreement about trade, about access toward one another's markets, will Germany be a reliable partner?
I think the Germans are well known in China as reliable, as far as I know. You can judge better than me.
Okay.
But,
so it will be one during this critical juncture.
Mm-hmm.
I think yes, I think Germans are quite reliable, but still. They are between the chairs.
Let's talk about some of the differences.
Yeah.
Since you keep on talking about the differences, it's important to know them. For example, about technology. Data protection, there is a different understanding of data protection.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in China, mobile pay works very well. But we see there is a hesitance or a slow process in some of developed economies. Some contributed to the already very well-developed banking system. Others know that the credit card system and credit system has been working very well for decades in those cultures. So China, of course, is a newcomer, and therefore people have less load or baggage with it when using a new technology and access to the technology. Having said that, though, Mr. Cui, data protection and the international rules regarding data, rather than national rules of data applying it to everybody else in the world, is some of the important topics to be discussed. The G20 touch on certain part of it, but very small of it.
Yes, I think it would be very big potential area for China and Germany. We can have some more cooperation. It's also the the main target for this cooperation between China and Germany on this Made in China 2025, and also the industry 4.0 vision. But now the problem is maybe we can try to transfer the reliable to another word. Is how could China and Germany we can find a new approach to deal with maybe a new cooperation on the basis of yes, we need to continue our cooperation, but at the same time, we need to take a serious regarding about how about the potential competitiveness between us. Even for this data industry or some other maybe new economy, I think we need to take a very clear understanding about the situation. So on this side, that on the basis, I hope that yes, we do have maybe a stronger and stronger cooperation. But of course, we need to have a very clear mindset.
The realities.
Yes.
Be pragmatic, Mr. Siren.
Yes, that's to be pragmatic. That's a very important point, and I do agree. I do agree to your point that we need to talk more to each other. It sounds very simple, but it is very important because there are still a lot of misunderstandings. Because we don't know so much about China, that this huge country with lots of people is governed in a different way, and probably Chinese don't know so much about our country, about our problems in Europe, about our role in the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
All very complicated
We
things.
hope discussions like this could at least help just a little bit. And we are going to talk about Germany and the current stage of Europe right after this break. Stay with us, the two of you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Stay with us on World Insight. Still to come on the program. Germany's ruling CDU party picked Merkel's successor. How will Europe reach to a Germany in transition?